The morning sun had barely crept above the skyline of Manhattan when Ethan Blake stepped out of his black SUV, adjusting the cuffs of his tailored charcoal gray suit. He moved with mechanical precision, like a man accustomed to control, every step purposeful, every breath measured. His driver knew not to speak, and his phone remained on silent, buried somewhere inside the interior pocket of his coat. The corner cafe wasn't extravagant, just a modest brick building tucked between luxury boutiques and glass towers. But Ethan liked it for one reason: consistency. The same seat by the window, the same black coffee, no sugar, the same 10-minute stay. He walked in. No greetings, no eye contact, just the soft chime of the door and the scrape of his chair against the floor as he took his usual spot. The waitress, Grace, gave him a polite nod. She didn't bother with small talk anymore. After 6 months of silence, she had learned that Mr. Blake didn't like noise. From her perspective, he was a man made of ice and glass, shiny on the outside, cold within. She didn't know that he was once different, that before the accident, he used to smile. At exactly 12:15 p.m., Ethan glanced at his watch, right on time. The coffee arrived with no words exchanged. He took a sip, eyes distant, barely noticing the world around him. Outside, the city moved at full speed, people laughing, horns blaring, life happening. Inside, Ethan sat still, a man trapped in a loop he couldn't seem to break. Then the door opened again. This time, it wasn't his driver. It was his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, led gently by the hand of her temporary caregiver. Her cane tapped softly against the tiles as she entered the cafe, and for a split second, Ethan's eyes flickered with something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. She couldn't see him, but she smiled anyway. The cafe fell into a quiet hush as Lily stood near the doorway, her tiny fingers clutching the hand of the caregiver, unsure of where she was. She tilted her head slightly, listening, her way of mapping the world without eyes. Grace noticed immediately. She'd seen Ethan alone for months, always rigid and unreachable. Seeing him now with a child, a fragile, blind little girl, was like catching a glimpse of a ghost he'd hidden from the world. "May we?" the caregiver asked gently. Ethan gave a curt nod, and the two made their way to his table. He rose halfway from his seat, awkwardly. Lily reached out, finding the edge of the chair by instinct, and climbed up. She didn't say a word. Neither did Ethan. Grace approached, holding her notepad. "Anything for the little one?" she asked, her tone lighter than usual. Lily flinched at the sound. Too loud. Too close. She ducked her head, retreating into herself. Grace hesitated. Then, softly, almost like a whisper, she began to hum. A gentle lullaby. Familiar. Sweet. Like something from a dream. Lily's shoulders relaxed. Her head lifted. She turned, almost exactly in Grace's direction, and smiled. It wasn't a full smile, just a flicker at the corners of her lips. But it was enough to make Ethan freeze. He hadn't seen her smile in 2 years. "She likes music," the caregiver said, surprised. "That song. She used to listen to it with her mom." Grace's eyes flicked to Ethan, but he was staring at Lily, stunned and unblinking. Grace crouched beside the table, her voice a breath. "Hey there, sweetheart. You've got a beautiful smile." Lily tilted her head again. "Are you singing?" Grace nodded before realizing the child couldn't see. "Yes, honey. Would you like me to sing again?" Lily reached toward the sound, hand hovering midair. Grace gently took it in hers. Ethan's throat tightened. The moment was small, insignificant to anyone else. But to him, it was everything. For the first time in forever, something cracked inside him, He didn't know what it was, but it sounded a lot like hope. The next day, Ethan returned to the cafe, again at 12:15, again in his pressed gray suit. But this time, Lily was with him. No caregiver. Just the two of them. He held her hand loosely, as if afraid she might break, or worse, pull away. She clung to her cane with her free hand, tapping gently as they entered. Grace noticed the change immediately. The way Ethan's eyes lingered on Lily now. The way his shoulders no longer tensed at her presence. He guided Lily to the same seat as before. She settled in quietly, hands folded in her lap. She was used to silence, used to waiting. Grace approached, careful not to startle her. "Hi again," she said softly. "Would you like to hear that song again?" Lily's face brightened. Yes. Ethan looked down at his daughter, his brow furrowing, not with frustration, but confusion. She hadn't answered anyone that quickly in months. Grace hummed the lullaby, the same one from the day before, but this time she added words. Her voice was soft, imperfect, but warm. The kind of voice that made people feel safe. Lily leaned closer, listening. And then she laughed, a tiny, breathy sound. Barely there. But it was a laugh. Grace gasped, and even Ethan's eyes widened. The cafe around them seemed to vanish. No other voices, no clinking cups. Just that one sound, a sound he hadn't heard since his wife's funeral. He didn't speak. He couldn't. Grace placed Lily's apple juice on the table. "You've got magic in your voice, little one," she said, smiling. Lily smiled too, bigger this time. And Ethan? He looked away, as if ashamed of the tears he wouldn't allow to fall. The moment passed, but something had changed. Something irreversible, and though Ethan wouldn't admit it, he knew. He'd be back tomorrow. The next few days unfolded like clockwork. Ethan and Lily arrived at the cafe together every afternoon. Same time, same table. But something was different now, barely noticeable, yet undeniable. Lily began to speak more, just small things, a soft "thank you," a question about the sounds outside, the texture of the table. But every word felt like a victory. Grace noticed the way Ethan watched her, not with attraction, but with something deeper. Curiosity. Longing. A silent envy of how easily she reached Lily when he could not. He rarely spoke, but Grace could see the ache in his eyes, the way his fingers twitched when Lily laughed, the way his jaw clenched when she leaned toward Grace instead of him. One afternoon, the cafe was unusually quiet. Lily sat stirring her orange juice, her fingers trailing circles on the rim of the glass. "Do you like music, Lily?" Grace asked. Lily nodded. "I remember it, from before." "Before what?" Grace asked gently. There was a pause. Ethan looked up from his coffee. "Before the car crashed," Lily said, almost like a whisper. Ethan froze. Grace blinked, stunned. She hadn't meant to push. "I was with Mommy," Lily continued. "We were singing. Then there was noise. Then, dark." Grace reached across the table and placed her hand over Lily's. "That must have been very scary." Lily nodded, and her lips trembled. Ethan couldn't look at her. His eyes stared straight ahead, blank and hollow. After a long silence, Lily said, "Daddy was driving." Grace looked at Ethan, but his face gave nothing away. No tears, no flinch, just silence. That night, Grace stayed after her shift to clean up. As she wiped the table where Ethan and Lily always sat, she found something left behind. A napkin, folded in half. On it, in precise handwriting. She hasn't said that out loud in 2 years. Grace held it in her hand for a long time, heart heavy. There was so much unspoken between them. So many things buried in silence. But now, for the first time, those silences were beginning to break. Grace lived 15 blocks from the cafe, in a small third-floor apartment that creaked when the wind blew too hard. The building was old, tired, but filled with warmth. Her days started before sunrise and ended long after dark. She worked the morning shift at the cafe, took care of her elderly grandmother in the evenings, and sometimes played her battered acoustic guitar when the night got too quiet. Music was once her world. She'd studied classical voice in college, had dreams of performing, maybe teaching. But when her grandmother's health declined, Grace dropped everything and came home. Dreams didn't pay for prescriptions. Still, she didn't regret it. Her grandmother had raised her when her own parents vanished into bad decisions and broken promises. Love, to Grace, wasn't something you spoke. It was something you showed. She hadn't told anyone at the cafe about her past. To them, she was just the kind waitress with the tired smile and messy bun. They didn't know that every song she hummed for Lily was something she'd once performed on stage. After meeting Lily, something inside her began to stir again. The girl didn't just listen. She felt music. She responded to tone, rhythm, the rise and fall of melody. And Grace saw something familiar in her. That quiet ache, the need for connection, the safety found in sound. She started bringing in little things. A toy that made soft bell tones. A straw that whistled when Lily blew into it. Nothing expensive, just scraps of joy. And every time Lily giggled, Grace felt like maybe she hadn't left her dreams behind. Maybe they'd just changed form. One evening, while washing dishes, her grandmother called from the couch, voice weak but playful. "You've been smiling more lately," she said. "What's his name?" Grace laughed, then paused. She didn't know his name was Ethan. Not yet. The next time Lily came into the cafe, she didn't hold a caregiver's hand. She held Ethan's. Not tightly, but not loosely either. Somewhere in between, like a child testing the weight of trust. Grace greeted them with her usual soft smile. But today, she had something hidden behind her back. "Guess what I brought?" she whispered as Lily sat. Lily leaned forward, curious. "What?" With a quick flourish, Grace revealed a small, colorful xylophone. The kind kids use in music class. Bright keys, soft mallet. Lily's fingers twitched at the sound of it being placed on the table. "Can I try?" she asked. "You can do more than try," Grace said, handing her the mallet. "Let's play a game." Grace tapped a note. Ding! And then another. "I'll play one, and you play it back. Ready?" Lily nodded, grinning. They went back and forth, creating tiny patterns. Grace changed the rhythm, challenged her to find new notes. Lily giggled when she got it right, furrowed her brow when she missed. Ethan watched from across the table. His coffee sat untouched. This wasn't just a game. This was connection. Lily didn't need to see Grace. She felt her presence through sound, through laughter, through melody. And Grace, she didn't treat Lily like something broken. She treated her like someone brilliant. Other patrons watched from their tables, charmed by the impromptu concert. A few clapped softly. One woman wiped her eyes. Grace beamed. But Ethan's expression darkened just slightly. He was proud, yes, amazed even. But under that, a pang of jealousy stirred. Why was it so easy for Grace? Why couldn't he reach Lily like that? After the game, Grace packed up the xylophone. "You were amazing," she told Lily. "You've got music inside you." "I like when you're here," Lily said shyly. Ethan looked down. Grace met his eyes, just for a second. There was something there, a question, and maybe a silent answer. but neither of them spoke. Not yet. It was a rainy afternoon when everything shifted. Gray clouds hung low over the city, and the cafe windows were beaded with droplets. Inside, the warm glow of yellow lights softened the gloom. A small radio played quietly in the background, old jazz, barely audible. Lily sat curled in her seat, legs crossed under her dress, her fingers tapping a silent rhythm against the tabletop. Grace had given her a paper cup with holes poked in the lid, filled with dried beans, a homemade shaker. She shook it gently, smiling to herself. Ethan sipped his coffee, his gaze flicking between the window and his daughter. He wasn't thinking about work. Not today. Not since he realized this cafe was the only place she ever seemed alive. Grace was wiping down a nearby table when it happened. Lily stopped shaking the cup. Her fingers froze midair. Then, softly, so softly Ethan almost missed it, she said a name. Grace. Grace turned. Did you say something, sweetheart? Lily turned her head toward the sound. Grace, she repeated, a little louder this time, clear, certain. It was the first word she had spoken unprompted in 2 years. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. He stared at Lily, eyes wide, as if seeing her for the very first time. Grace dropped the rag she was holding. Her lips parted. I'm here, she said, stunned. Lily smiled shyly, her head tilting like she was listening for a smile in return. Ethan looked down at the table, suddenly unsteady. A storm churned behind his eyes. Joy, relief. Something else, too. Something he didn't know how to name. Thank you, he murmured, barely audible. Grace didn't respond. She couldn't. Her throat had closed around the lump of emotion that rose without warning. Outside, the rain picked up, streaking the windows like teardrops. Inside, something even more powerful fell between them. Words. Real words. Small ones. Honest ones. Carried not by force or fear, but by music and trust. And in that quiet little cafe, a girl who couldn't see had just shown 2 broken adults how to truly be seen. The next morning, Ethan didn't show up. No Lily, no quiet entrance, no watch checking or coffee orders. Grace tried to ignore the sinking in her chest as the hours passed. Maybe he had a meeting. Maybe Lily was sick. Maybe it was nothing. But the silence felt too loud. By the following day, worry turned to ache. She missed Lily's laugh, the way her fingers danced when she played with sound, the way she said her name like it meant something. And, if she was honest, she missed Ethan too. His silence had always been heavy, but lately it had softened. There had been a question in his eyes she'd almost hoped he'd ask. A tension in him that felt less like armor and more like fear of being touched. But now, nothing. On the 3rd day, Grace stayed after her shift, staring out the front window long after closing. The seat by the window remained empty, napkin untouched, coffee ring clean. Then her manager walked out from the back. There was a man here earlier, he said, tossing his apron aside. Left something for you. He handed her a sealed envelope. Grace opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten note, the same precise, elegant script as before. Grace, thank you for giving Lily something I couldn't. You made her feel safe, heard, alive. But this was never meant to be more than a moment. Our world is not yours. I shouldn't have let it go this far. Please, don't look for us. E. Blake Grace read it twice, then a 3rd time. Her hands trembled. Tears welled up before she could stop them, blurring the words until they ran together. Not from heartbreak. Not yet. But from something worse. Abandonment. The seat by the window had never looked so empty. 3 weeks passed. 3 long, hollow weeks since Ethan had last seen Lily smile the way she did with Grace. Since he'd watched his daughter say a name, her name, with light in her voice. But that light had faded. Lily stopped asking about the cafe after the first week. She grew quieter, withdrawn. The progress they'd made began to unravel, and Ethan felt powerless to stop it. He'd told himself walking away was the right thing, that Grace deserved a simple life, untouched by the weight he carried. That love wasn't safe near him. But now he knew he'd been lying. So he found her. It took a few calls, a favor from his driver, and a discreet visit to the cafe while she was off shift. He stood now outside her building, holding nothing but an umbrella and regret. It was a modest walk-up in Queens. Faded brick, rusted railing. The kind of place you didn't expect to find Grace, until you did. He knocked. Once, twice. The door opened slowly. Grace stood there, barefoot in sweatpants and a faded t-shirt, eyes tired, hair undone. She didn't look surprised to see him, just guarded. "What do you want, Ethan?" He hesitated, then took a breath. "You." She blinked. "I don't mean as staff. I don't need a nanny, or a singer, or a waitress. I need you, for Lily, for me." She folded her arms. "And what? You'll write a check? Move us into some penthouse? Let me play Cinderella until it gets inconvenient?" "No," he said, his voice low. "No money, no deals. I came here without anything to offer, but the truth." She studied him, the weight of those words hanging between them. "I walked away because I was scared," he admitted. "I've lost too much, but I'm losing more without you." Grace's jaw clenched. "I don't want your money, Ethan." "You won't get it," he said gently. "But I will give you every piece of what's left of me." Silence. Then Grace stepped back, just slightly. "Come in," she said. Ethan sat on the worn couch in Grace's small living room, his elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped tight. He looked out the window, though there was nothing there, just darkness and the soft hum of city life far below. Grace sat across from him, silent. The only sound was the slow tick of an old wall clock and the occasional creak of the floorboards. He didn't know how to begin. So he didn't. He just spoke. "It was raining that day," he said. "The accident." Grace didn't move. "We were on our way to her ballet recital. Lily was in the back. My wife kept telling me to slow down. I didn't listen. I thought I could beat the storm. Thought I was in control." His voice cracked. "I lost control." He paused, swallowing hard. "Her name was Rachel. She died instantly. I woke up in the hospital with a broken arm and a blind daughter who wouldn't speak to me. Not because she didn't love me, but because she couldn't remember how to live." Grace's eyes welled up, but she didn't interrupt. "I hired the best therapists, moved us to a private estate. I thought if I gave Lily enough comfort, enough safety, maybe she'd find her way back." He looked up at Grace, eyes burning, but she didn't need safety. She needed you. Grace shook her head, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. She needed music, kindness. She needed someone to see her. Ethan's voice dropped. "You see her in a way I never could. I see a little girl I broke. You see someone still whole." Just then, a soft shuffle came from the hallway. Lily appeared in the doorway, pajama-clad, holding her cane. Neither adult moved. She walked slowly toward them, her cane tapping gently against the wood floor. "Daddy!" Ethan turned to her, startled. "Lily!" She reached forward, hands feeling for him. He took them gently, trembling. Grace covered her mouth, crying now. "I heard you," Lily whispered. "I don't blame you." Ethan closed his eyes, shattered by those 4 words. She didn't blame him. And just like that, the weight he'd carried for years cracked. And something new began to rise in its place. Weeks passed, and slowly, Grace became part of their world. Not as a guest, not as an employee, as someone essential. She started coming over in the afternoons, her apron exchanged for jeans and soft sweaters. She brought her guitar, small percussion toys, and sometimes nothing but her voice. Lily's bedroom, once silent and sterile, began to bloom with sound. Grace showed her how to find the piano keys by feel, how to hear the pitch of each note, how to recognize songs by rhythm. Lily's laughter, rare, musical, filled the halls like light returning to a long-abandoned home. But it wasn't just Lily who changed. Ethan did too. At first, he hovered, unsure, reluctant, watching from the doorway as Grace knelt beside his daughter, coaxing her into little bursts of bravery. But one afternoon, Grace placed a small hand drum in his lap. "She wants to play with you," she said simply. Ethan blinked. "I don't know how." "You don't need to," Grace smiled. "Just follow her lead." So he did. Lily tapped a rhythm. Ethan copied. She sped up. He tried to keep pace, fumbling, laughing. For the first time in a very long time, they made noise together. Not in conflict, not in chaos, but in harmony. Later that evening, Ethan found himself sitting beside Lily at the piano. She touched a single key. "C," she whispered. He pressed the same one. "C," he echoed. Grace watched from the kitchen doorway, tears catching in the corners of her eyes. This was healing, not grand, not dramatic, but found in the smallest moments. The brush of hands on keys, the matching of breath to rhythm, the shared silence between 2 people finally learning how to speak without words. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Ethan lingered on the back patio where Grace was sitting with a mug of tea. He didn't say anything. He just sat beside her. She looked at him, soft-eyed, and reached out. He didn't pull away. They watched the stars come out, and for the first time in years, the darkness no longer felt so heavy. The auditorium was small, no grand stage or velvet curtains, just a modest wooden platform surrounded by folding chairs. Parents whispered softly as they waited, the air buzzing with gentle anticipation. It was the annual showcase at Lily's new school for the blind. Ethan sat in the 3rd row, heart pounding against his ribs. He wore a simple sweater, not his usual tailored suit. Tonight wasn't about status. It was about presence. Grace stood near the side of the stage, tuning a small electric keyboard. Lily sat beside her, feet swinging just above the floor, fingers poised with quiet confidence. She wore a pale blue dress with tiny embroidered stars. Grace had picked it out. The room dimmed. Silence. Then, music. Soft, tentative notes at first, like a story unfolding. Grace added harmony beneath Lily's melody, supporting but never leading. Lily's fingers danced across the keys. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Not from pride, but from revelation. This wasn't the daughter he'd been trying to fix. This was someone entirely her own. Resilient, brave, whole. And she didn't need him to repair her. She needed him to see her. As the last note rang out, the audience applauded gently, respectfully. Lily turned toward the sound, smiling wide. "Thank you," she said clearly into the microphone. "And thank you, Grace, for helping me find my music." Grace leaned in and kissed the top of her head. Ethan couldn't breathe. He wiped his eyes and stood as they stepped off stage. Grace led Lily toward him, one hand resting on her shoulder. She reached him first. "Daddy?" Lily said softly. "Did you hear me?" Ethan crouched to her level, voice trembling. "I heard all of you." Lily grinned, then turned toward Grace. "She made me brave." Ethan looked up at Grace. Her eyes met his, warm, steady, without expectation. He reached for her hand and took it in his. Not as a thank you, not as a beginning, but as a promise. He finally saw them both, and in doing so, he saw himself for the first time. Ethan's voice, calm and steady, carries over a quiet montage of soft morning light and distant birdsong. For a long time, I believed life had taken everything from me. My wife, my peace, the light in my daughter's eyes. I thought I was destined to live in silence, surrounded by walls of guilt I built myself. A slow shot of Lily at the piano, playing gently in their living room. Grace sits beside her, humming in harmony. But then someone came along, someone who didn't try to fix what was broken. She just listened. She saw Lily not as fragile, but as fire. And she reminded me that love, real love, isn't loud. It's in the stillness, in the rhythm, in the letting go. Cut to Ethan placing a music sheet into a folder labeled Lily Blake, Winter Recital. Then, the final scene. A quiet park at sunset. Golden light spills across the path. Ethan walks slowly, hand in hand with Lily on one side, Grace on the other. Lily holds her cane in her free hand, tapping gently, confidently. They walk together in sync, no need for words. Ethan's voice returns, softer now. Life didn't take my sight. It gave me someone who taught me how to see. The camera pulls back slowly, rising into the trees as their figures grow smaller. Together, steady, whole. Fade to black. Soft piano music plays. The end. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more emotional journeys just like this one. We'd love to hear from you. What part of the story moved you the most? Leave a comment below and let's talk about it. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter.